April 23rd, 1985. It's a date that still sends shivers down the spines of marketing executives worldwide. To some, it was a tragedy. To others, a conspiracy. That morning, at New York's Lincoln Center, the Coca-Cola company did the unthinkable. They announced they were killing the world's most famous secret formula. The public reaction wasn't just a complaint about taste, it was a visceral sense of betrayal, as if a piece of American history had been erased from the shelf. But was it the greatest corporate blunder of all time? Or was it a cold, calculated move to destroy a rising rival? To find the truth, we have to look at the documents. To understand the scale of the disaster, we have to go back to 1886. For a century, the formula was the cornerstone of global commerce and culture. Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink, it was a symbol of optimism, freedom, and the American way of life. It was the real thing. But by the 1970s, the crown was slipping. For 15 consecutive years, Coke's market share had been in a slow-motion collapse. Pepsi was closing in. The primary catalyst was the Pepsi challenge. Pepsi's sweeter formula was consistently beating Coke in blind tests across the country. Pepsi was winning the culture war, branding themselves as the choice of a new generation, while Coke was seen as the drink of the past. The man tasked with saving the kingdom was Roberto Goizueta. Born into a wealthy Cuban family, his life was defined by sudden, drastic change. When the Castro regime seized power, Goizueta fled to the U.S. with almost nothing. His only assets? 100 shares of Coca-Cola stock. He was a chemical engineer who viewed the brand through a scientific lens. To him, there were no sacred cows, not even the formula. His right-hand man was Sergio Zeman, a high-energy marketer from Mexico City who viewed branding as a cold, data-driven science. Zeman had already seen massive success with the launch of Diet Coke in 1982. He believed he had the mandate to modernize the main brand. Together, they launched Project Kansas, a top-secret operation shrouded in a level of secrecy usually reserved for national security. To keep the project hidden, they lied to their own employees. They claimed the new syrup being produced was for a Cherry Coke expansion. They even sent fake packaging to manufacturers to mislead Pepsi, including designs that touted fewer calories to throw competitors off the scent. The scale of research was unprecedented. They spent 4 years conducting nearly 200,000 secret blind taste tests. The results were statistically staggering. The new formula beat Pepsi and the original Coke by huge margins in every single test market. But they missed the context. They asked people if they liked the taste, but they never asked how they would feel if the original was gone forever. They failed to account for taste memory, the emotional bond between a consumer's brain and the brand's history. On April 23rd, Goizueta took the stage. He called the new flavor smoother, rounder, yet bolder. The room was silent with disbelief. Reporters were stunned. One asked, "If it ain't broke, why are you fixing it?" Goizueta's response was a bet on data over emotion. The reaction was instantaneous. The 800 Get Coke hotline exploded, surging from 400 calls a day to over 8,000 in weeks. A psychiatrist hired to monitor calls noted that consumers sounded as if they were mourning the death of a family member. It was grief. Over 40,000 protest letters arrived. One was addressed simply to Chief Dodo. Goizueta kept it as a reminder of his mistake. In the streets, the anger turned to action. People were pouring new Coke into the sewers in public protests. Panic buying swept the nation. One man in San Antonio spent over $1,000 to hoard original Coke before it vanished. Pepsi seized the moment. They gave their entire workforce the day off and ran full-page ads declaring, "The other guy just blinked." Pepsi's sales spiked by 14%, the largest growth in their history. It looked like a total victory for the blue brand. Inside Atlanta, the pressure was unbearable. Goizueta and President Donald Keogh were realizing they had underestimated the American soul. 77 days into the experiment, they made the call. The original formula had to return. It was a total surrender. The news was so massive that ABC News interrupted the popular soap opera General Hospital to announce the return of the real thing. Donald Keogh famously said, "The truth is we are not that smart and we are not that dumb." The crowd erupted in relief. Logistically, it was a Herculean task. They had to pivot production and distribution across the entire globe in a matter of days. Then, the miracle happened. Coke's sales didn't just recover, they exploded. Classic grew at twice the rate of Pepsi's best year. This led to the conspiracy theory. Was it all a plot to switch to cheaper high-fructose corn syrup and re-energize the brand? The blunder cost $34 million in research and wasted advertising, but it ultimately saved the kingdom's future. For years, the company tried to offer both, but New Coke struggled to find an audience alongside the returning king. In 1990, the formula was rebranded as Coke 2, targeting younger drinkers who preferred Pepsi's sweetness. It was a final attempt to save the R&D. They test-marketed Coke 2 in Spokane, Washington. Despite aggressive "we've got your number" ads, it never gained national traction. It suffered an identity crisis. Consumers were confused, and by the late 90s, Coke 2 was quietly being phased out. On July 10, 2002, Coke 2 was officially discontinued. The 17-year experiment was finally over. In 2019, New Coke made a brief nostalgic comeback for the Netflix series Stranger Things, proving that even failures can become cultural lore. Today, modern operations like the Heartland campus in Olathe, Kansas, represent a new era of massive, automated production for the brand. This generational investment handles the complexity of hundreds of variants with a level of precision that was unimaginable in 1985. The New Coke saga is now taught in every business school as the ultimate lesson in brand equity. Never ignore the heart for the sake of the data. Despite the debacle, Goizueta grew the company's market value from $4 billion to $145 billion by his death in 1997. He learned that for some products, the emotional connection is more important than the chemical formula. A brand is a memory. Coca-Cola rediscovered its heritage through its greatest failure. New Coke was the poison that ultimately saved the product's soul. In the end, you can't replace a century of tradition with a sweeter version of the truth. You can only rediscover what made it real. Coca-Cola didn't just survive the 80s, they redefined what it meant to be the real thing. They became an eternal icon, because some brands don't just belong to companies, they belong to the people who love them, and they are here to stay.